What's good with the YouTube of Convict's Perspective, man? Today we got an interesting topic, man. It's your boy Flaco, man, coming live and direct. So I'm going to talk about red on red Norteños, right? Red on red crime and the issues that were going on in the late 80s and 90s. So in order to understand the implementations of the red on red, right, we need to take it back to, let's say, the late 80s, early 90s. And at that time, you had a lot of veteranos, a lot of NR members, a lot of dudes that were coming out to the streets, to the joint. And sometime around the 80s, you know, a lot of these hoods out there in San Jose, Stockton, Sacramento, Modesto, Salinas, they started representing the Norte, XIV, 14, in these barrios, right? And the hoods, you know, they were out there, but the transition and transformation as far as the Norteño collective wasn't really like totally deep out there in the streets. They were just presence. And so I say around the time when the movie Colors came out, right? And Mi Vida Loca, American Me, Blood In, Blood Out. As far as an area where I'm from, San Jose started to have a flourish of Norteños coming out from everywhere. I mean, the Norteños just started to get deep out there in the streets. And this also continued to happen in other areas such as Modesto, Sacramento, Stockton, Tulare County, Salinas, San Fran, Oakland. And just there was a new wave of Norteños, and you had a lot of viejos that were coming out to the streets, and they were lacing youngsters about what being a Norteño was and what was the cause. And at that time in these hoods, right, I can speak on the San Jose area because that's where I'm from. It was a little bit different in the 90s, right? As you heard me touch on, there wasn't really no threat from the upstate Sureños at that time. They were never really taken serious. They were out there and they used to stay in their pockets, and we used to go from time to time to go put in work, right? But as all these hoods started to evolve out there, right, you started having a lot of set tripping, right? In the area I was from, you used to have Capitol Park, Palmas, BMLs. They used to all go at it. Horseshoe, West Side Mob, they used to go at it. And then you can go to all the other cities, man. Like in Hayward, you had DGF and A Street Caparamos. They were going at it. Redwood City, you had Little Mexican Gangsters and Eastside Mala going at it. Same thing in Gilroy. ESG and OSP used to go at it. So you started to have a whole lot of big-time set tripping that was going on at that time. In fact, when I caught my controlling case for when I first went to prison, it was for a red-on-red crime. But at that time, there wasn't no implementations. I did a drive-by shooting on a hood out there in San Jose called Barrio Mas Chingon, who was a rival at the time out there on the streets. And so what ended up happening is a lot of these influential C's like Skip, right, who had his ear to the streets, and a few other carnales and bros, around 97, the same time they made all the changes and implementations for the dismantling the Nuestra Raza, right? They started to make certain changes as far as red on red, right? And this is the straight mandate that I had, word for word, that came out from the Bay that I actually got sent to me through Skip at the time when I paroled to the streets. And here it is. This is the implementation of the red on red policy. A mi raza. The following red on red policy was created and adopted in 1997 by the Carnales in Pelican Bay for the specific reason of creating awareness and strong unity for and towards all Northerner and Norteño soldados within the county jails, Pitas, and more so for those representing El Norte on the streets. Keep in mind that when speaking about Norteños on the streets, we speak on behalf of all cities, towns, and barrios within the streets of Califas. What this means is that if you claim representing El Norte and believe in the sangre, blood of our red paño, and more so the cause and struggle of our people, then it is each and every one's responsibility as soldados to defend your fellow soldados at all cost. El Norte is not an individual thing. It is a form of unity, and we must all show carnalismo towards one another. This unity is formed through soldados from many cities, towns, and barrios, and the respect must be at its highest level. No barrio is better than the next. All are considered equal, period. It's all our job to uplift our people and provide any assistance we can to protect, defend, and secure our people and barrios from the real enemy, and that being the Sureños. Make sure there is no mistake as to who our enemy is. Keep in mind that we must never show any forms of violent attitudes towards any fellow ends. To raise a hand towards a fellow end is considered a crime of red on red and must be understood as such. This type of crime will not be tolerated on any level. Therefore, once an end soldado is made aware, it is his job duty to spread the word and educate other fellow ends of this policy. Each end soldado must respect other radios no matter what city or town that radio is in. One major example is that no ends to tag his name, nickname, or hood, and another ends radio. Each radio must look out for each other radios and keep a high level of communication so that we're all on the same page. The level of respect must be of equality for El Norte as a whole, and any N or radio committing violent acts upon fellow Ns in a radio warfare type fashion will be deemed in opposition to our beliefs and moral standards. Be mindful that if any Ns or radios is found guilty of such violations, will suffer serious repercussions. Final note. It is important to understand that there are some who have forgotten the value of family and therefore are taking upon themselves to take an issue or beef to the house of other fellow Ns. Let's not forget that it's in these houses where our mothers, fathers, children, wives, etc. live in, and it's these same houses that we keep private and safe from any harm, especially from our enemy. We must protect our homes and families, and most of all, trust that our fellow Ns will do the same, as if it was their house. So those knowing all this, let's not continue the bad cycle and be part of the problem, but rather key figures to positive situations and solutions. So there it is. That's word for word, the implementation and mandates that came out in Red on Red. And see, for me, it's kind of a trip, right? Because if you see what the MA was doing in the early 90s when they had that big hometown, they had all the radios put together and they said no more drive-by shootings, no more set tripping, and they started to tax these individuals. This is the same philosophy that the NF started to implement out there on the streets. Because anybody who remembers back in the 90s, it was on site, man, with other hoods at all times, man. Like, unless you were cool with certain individuals and certain radios, like I had homeboys from Capitol Park, I had homeboys from Horseshoe, I was good. But there's times where I went through other hoods, and because I wasn't from there, they'd come run up on me. Of course, I'm going to tell them where I'm from. Next thing you know, we're getting out. Boom, boom, boom. I'm getting jumped or whatnot. And the same repercussions would happen if we were in our hood and some hood came through that was from some other area. Hey, what you doing in our neighborhood? You know what I'm saying? Which, you know what I mean? Sometimes they'd have their hood on their hat. We tell them take off their hat. If they didn't take off their hat, we smash them. And that was the mindset of Red on Red. And a lot of homeboys were catching cases. You know, like I said, all these hoods were going at it, doing drive-bys and stabbings, and a few got killed. And so finally, the carnales, they caught wind of this, and it took years for it to basically get out there on the streets. And so the flip side of it, the Red on Red thing, what ended up happening though with it, in my personal opinion, is there started to be a lot of Northerners and Nortenos on the streets that weren't with the business that would hide behind it. They would do faulty situations or scenarios, right? To where they would be disrespectful, they would gossip, they would do this and that. And then say you as a man would go confront this individual like, hey, what's cracking? They would hide behind that Red on Red and strike a filter. You know, I had a situation out there in my hood where we had two homeboys that were feuding over a female, right? And Belone and some other cat, Durf, from out there in Milpitas. And it continued to where other homeboys were getting involved in the issue and stuff, where homeboys were getting jumped and other homeboys were getting involved in here that weren't even Norteños, and it became a big issue of a little internal conflict. You know what I'm saying? And so what I ended up doing in that situation was I took the two homeboys and said, hey, we're going to go up to the hills. We went up to the hills. I was strapped. If anybody got a line, I was going to do what I had to do. I brought another brother that was from a whole different area to let him address the issue because I knew both these individuals on a personal level. And what we did was we gave them the ultimatum that, look, Red on Red is not going to be accepted. You guys have a personal issue. Deal with it right here, right now. Get it out your system. And see, there was all kinds of other situations. Like I talked about another situation where I think it was a Bonma shot at Mas Locos, and this was around 2001. And we were got at through Skip and Goose for me and another brother to go set up a meeting with Bonmas and Mas Locos. We went there with Philo and Shorte and other cat Nacho. We all went to a certain I think it was at TGI Fridays in Cupertino, and the brother I was with, he did all the talking. You know what I'm saying? But fortunately for me, I knew a couple individuals, and so I started staying in contact with individual Philo. I knew Shorty from the Boys Ranch, and they came up to a whole conclusion that this wasn't going to be tolerated anymore. So what they ended up doing is we had one representative from one hood communicate with one representative from their hood, and we held them accountable. If they didn't fall on file with these stipulations, they were all going to be deemed. There it is, there, cut and dry. And so Red on Red's been a situation that's happened for years, man. Not just in San Juan, like I said, Modesto, Sacramento, Stockton, I mean, it was the way of life, gangbanging out there in the streets. We didn't have oppositions from the Sureños out there. Like, they weren't really a threat. They were in pockets, and whenever you had action to go get one, you would handle your business. But they weren't out there on Front Street. They weren't out there to get got. You know. And so through the years, you know, it's the red on red situation has changed, man. And a lot of homeboys who've been solid have actually got caught up on it. And a lot of times it all happens over someone who is basically some soft ass weenie cat or some lame who gets disrespectful. You go as a man to handle your business. See, when I was functioning as an NR and NF out there in the streets, I didn't care if you were a homeboy and you disrespected me, I was going to deal with you. But I had enough authority out there in the streets to where I wouldn't have no consequences. But the same would happen with other individuals. So there's always types of conflicts to where this hood disrespected this person, or a party happened over here. Like I talked about that big Halloween party in 2002 when Casper from Capitol Park got deemed no good. He got deemed no good because there was one NF member present and there was one NF associate. That was myself and Weechel from Saho. And it was a petty issue why it kicked off. You know what I'm saying? Basically put two members of the regiment in danger. And so those are the actions out there in the streets. And what ends up happening is alcohol gets involved, drugs get involved, and a woman gets involved. You don't know how many times homeboys have gotten crossed up on red issues all over a female. And it gets real. You know what I'm saying? And I used to always feel like, even back then, I was all about the unity of the Norteños and all that stuff, right? But I used to say this all the time. I felt a lot of people hid behind that red on red thing. Because as soon as this mandate came out, individuals that weren't with the business, that weren't with the shit, started to be disrespectful in other ways. And the first thing they would be the first ones to file that report. You know what I'm saying? Especially if a homie smashed on them or you know what I'm saying, their female leaves them or this and that. You know what I mean? You know, you could no longer be a man and handle your business. You know what I'm saying? And I know other hoods have undergone the same situation. And what ends up happening with this red on red policy is, say if you come in off the streets for a red on red crime, you're gonna be entitled to your due process. They're gonna investigate it and they're gonna find out if you have the knowledge and education to understand your actions, and therefore it's gonna look at the severity of your crime. You know, if you shed blood on an innocent Norteño because you were misbehaving or caused any type of wreckage or harm out there, 9 out of 10 times you're gonna be deemed no good. And then there's gonna be those who are aimless or not educated, and they may be given the benefit of the doubt. And then there's going to be those who have some type of financial purpose, right? Or some type of resource that regardless if they commit a red on red crime, they're going to be cleared for their actions. So this is just a little spill for you guys to understand. I mean, I know you guys are all from other areas and you guys probably have your own stories of red on red crime. You know what I'm saying? And it's the one thing that I kind of, in a sense, I used to kind of get irritated and frustrated about, because when I was out there on the streets, I was with the biz, bro. You know what I'm saying? I was with the biz. You disrespect me, I don't care who you is. We're going to have problems. Now, I'll answer for that later. And there's a lot of people out there who would be in these same situations to where they're beasts. They're with the business. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? They'll cater your head real quick or pull them 100-round drums and just lay them off. You know what I mean? And now you got these cats that you know what I'm saying, that you look at them, you know that they're soft, they're weenies, but because they're a homeboy, they're giving them a pass. Or you can't take the action that you want because it's a red on red crime. You know, so that's a little history and spill, you know. The Bay decided to make those changes, man, because, like I said, the Sureños were doing the same thing. And then when they made all those revisals I've talked about numerous times, the salutation filter and the GUNCD, all these implementations happened at the same time, and there was only one purpose. Yeah, it's good to unite the gente and put them together, right? But when you got all hoods working together, parallel, like we do in prison, like a branching union, where everybody's following under the same procedures, and they're under that NF umbrella, that's a resource pool right there. You know what I'm saying? Now we can start collecting taxes. Now we can get contributions. Now we can get members working with the regiments. Because before in the 80s, even in the 90s, it was very, very rare for an NR member or an Norteño to function with a regiment. You know, at one time there was a policy that as an NR member, when you stepped out into the streets, you were expected to assist for 60 days. 60 days or 90 days as an NR member, because you didn't have that obligation, you know. And so what the NF started to see, right, is after the indictments, like we talked about with Silent, Spankiel, Wevel, and all them, right, Eddie Vargas, all these individuals got indicted in that serious case back in Salo, right? It was the NF taking care of their own business. They started to realize, well, look at what the Sureños are doing. Look what the MA is doing with the Sureños. They have their camaradas and foot soldiers out there doing a lot of their work, generating this money. Well, we got the same amount of foot soldiers, and if we're requesting at least 25% from any illicit activities or the resources that they have to share with us to have the backing of the mob, which is another terminology we don't use that much on this channel, but the NF, we call ourselves the mob, the organization. That's what the NF is. It's a mob. It's an organization. So now you have all these associates that are willing to work with you. What that leads to is less heat on other NF members. Foot soldiers on the streets generating money, and it continue to generate. Because after time, they started to realize that when they sent certain NF members out there to the streets, it was only a matter of time before they got caught up. You know what I mean? Because they were putting in some work out there, man. They were extorting drug dealers, businesses, prostitutions. They were involved in all that. And so I guess, Cuete was one of the ones that seen the potential in this, but this wasn't just a one-man show. They all decided to implement that. So now, like, you see homeboys that are working with a regiment out there, they're just Red Northeners. Sometimes they've never even been to the joint before. Whereas before, that would have been a no-no. You know what I'm saying? You would have to go through a whole complete screening process to be recruited. And so, see, that all these things, they intertwine together. The red on red policy was to unite all gentes under one bandera, right? The salutations was basically to strip the NR and remind everybody that there's only one organization. GUN, the same philosophy. And since then, if you start to see the transformation as far as within these Norteño barrios, they're all looking at as working with the homeboys. It's a privilege and an honor. I'm working with the regiment. I'm contributing. These are the terms that you start to hear out there on the streets. Whereas before, Northerners, Norteños, they would not interact in NF business. They would just be out in these barrios and they'd be gangbanging and getting their hustle on, you know what I mean, and doing this and that. And it was a whole different philosophy as opposed to being associated with the NF. You wouldn't be able to even say the NF when you went to county jail. That word was basically sacred, the word carnales. Even people wouldn't even talk about the structure of the NR at that time. Those were people that were political figures, as they said. So see, that's the whole thing. Like I said, the red on red thing, you can sit there and say, okay, it's about uniting the gente and all that, but there's always a monetary purpose in everything that the NF does. It doesn't have just one agenda. You know what I'm saying? And so there's been homies from time to time. You still see individuals get caught up for red on red, and some of it justified, some of it personal. You know what I'm saying? When you give an individual access to paper and pen to tell their story the way they want to tell it, you can never tell what's factual and what's not. And if you got the backing of other individuals who are going to favoritize you, it's going to put a whole lot of individuals in a bad situation to where they can get crossed up. I've seen homeboys get crossed up over red on red, then get cleared years later. Like I said, this has been a situation that's been going on for a long time. You don't experience red on red on the streets no more. That's been dismissed. But you still have issues amongst homeboys out there privately, or sometimes they may feel a certain way, like, wow, this dude disrespect me, I want to handle my business. And you're told that you can't. And I always had a problem with that, because if you disrespect me as a man, I don't care what hood you're from. You know what I'm saying? I don't care who you know. I'm a man, you're a man. I'm going to deal with you. You know what I'm saying? And that's the whole mindset that we used to have out there on the streets. You know what I'm saying? People start to hide behind this red on red thing. And that's just, it is what it is, man. So I just wanted to touch upon that. There's a couple situations I addressed in here. And if you guys have any other comments or topics, I'm just trying to put a quick video out for you guys, because I'm still waiting on time to meet up with Rojo. We're going to have future content that we're going to put out there. But for now, I'm Flaco with a convict's perspective. Have a good one.